Right now, you are absolutely certain about something that never happened. You don't know which memory it is. But the research is clear. Somewhere inside your mind, sitting alongside everything you've genuinely lived, there is a false memory so perfectly constructed that you cannot tell it apart from the real ones. It feels true. It has texture. It has detail. It might even have emotion attached to it. And no matter how confident you feel, the confidence itself is part of the lie. This is not a glitch. This is how memory was always designed to work. In 1974, a cognitive psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus ran an experiment so simple it should not have changed everything. But it did. She showed participants footage of a car accident. A real crash, filmed and played back on a screen. Then she asked them a single question. One group was asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? The other group was asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? One word. That was the only difference. The group that heard smashed remembered the cars going significantly faster. They were more likely to say they saw broken glass in the footage. There was no broken glass. Loftus hadn't just measured memory. She had altered it. With one carefully chosen word, she had reached inside the minds of strangers and quietly rewritten what they believed they had seen. The experiment is now considered one of the most important in the history of psychology. And it raises a question you should probably sit with for a moment. If one word from a stranger can do that, what has a lifetime of conversations, photographs, and stories done to you? Your memory is not a recording. This is the single most important thing to understand before anything else. You have probably spent your entire life assuming it works like a camera. You experience something, it gets saved, and later you press play. But that is not even close to what is actually happening. Every time you retrieve a memory, you are not accessing a stored file. You are reconstructing it. From scratch. Each time. Think of it like this. Imagine a puzzle that gets taken apart every night and rebuilt every morning. Sometimes a piece goes missing. Sometimes a new piece gets added. Over time, the image drifts. The puzzle you're rebuilding in your mind today is not the same one you built 10 years ago, even if you're convinced it is. This is what neuroscientists call reconsolidation. When a memory is recalled, it briefly becomes unstable. It opens. And in that open state, it is vulnerable to being changed by what is happening around you right now. What someone says to you. What you're feeling. What you've recently read. All of it can slip in and become part of what you're convinced you actually experienced. Karim Nader at McGill University was one of the first researchers to demonstrate this at a biological level. In a landmark 2000 study, Nader showed that the act of remembering a memory physically destabilizes the proteins that store it in the brain. The memory literally has to be rebuilt after every recall. And each rebuild is slightly different from the last. You are not just misremembering. Your brain is fundamentally incapable of storing a perfect replay of the past. That is not a bug. That is the architecture. But here is where it gets stranger. In the 1990s, Elizabeth Loftus took her research further. She wanted to know whether entirely false memories could be implanted, not just distorted. She recruited participants and, with the help of their family members, constructed a short written description of a childhood event that had never happened. Getting lost in a shopping mall at age 5. Feeling scared. Being found by an elderly stranger. Being reunited with the family. None of it was real. But when participants read the description and were asked to recall that day, something extraordinary happened. About 1 in 4 participants didn't just say they remembered it. They expanded on it. They added details. They described the stranger's clothes. They described how they felt. They described things that Loftus had never put in the original suggestion. They had not just accepted a false memory. They had decorated it. They had made it their own. When the study ended and participants were told the truth, some of them still believed the memory was real. The disclosure was not enough to undo what had been created. The false memory had become structurally indistinguishable from a true one. Now stop and think about your own childhood. How many of your earliest memories come from photographs? How many of them come from stories your parents told you, repeated over the years at dinner tables and birthday parties? How many of them do you actually remember versus how many have you constructed from the fragments other people handed you? The research suggests that a huge proportion of your earliest autobiographical memories are, at least in part, reconstructions built from outside sources. You did not remember them. You built them. And then you remembered the build. This does not mean your entire life is a fiction. Most of your memories are broadly accurate, especially the ones tied to strong emotion or repeated experience. But the details, the exact words someone said, what they were wearing, who was standing on which side of the room, whether the light was on or off, these are almost certainly wrong. The skeleton of the memory may be real. The flesh you have put on it is manufactured. Daniel Schacter at Harvard University spent decades cataloging what he called the 7 sins of memory. Transience, absent-mindedness, blocking, misattribution, suggestibility, bias, and persistence. What is striking about this list is not the existence of each flaw. It is the way they cluster together to reveal a single truth: memory is not designed for accuracy. It is designed for usefulness. Your ancestors did not need a perfect record of the past. They needed to learn from danger fast, recognize patterns, build relationships, and move forward. A brain that spent energy preserving photographic accuracy of every moment would have been wildly inefficient. So instead, evolution gave you a brain that captures the gist, the emotional weight, the social meaning, and lets the details fill themselves in later. This is why eyewitness testimony has been overturned in thousands of criminal cases. Not because witnesses lied. Because they remembered exactly what their brain had constructed, which was not necessarily what their eyes had seen. The Innocence Project, which uses DNA evidence to exonerate wrongly convicted prisoners, has found that eyewitness misidentification was a contributing factor in nearly 70% of wrongful convictions. 70%. These were not dishonest people. These were human beings operating with the only memory system nature gave them. And yet the legal system, for most of its history, treated eyewitness testimony as the gold standard. Confident, detailed, emotionally consistent. All the qualities that actually make a memory less reliable, not more. Because here is the last piece, and this is the one that tends to unsettle people most: confidence and accuracy are not correlated in human memory. When someone says they are absolutely certain they remember something exactly as it happened, that certainty tells you almost nothing about whether they are right. In fact, some research suggests that the most vivid, most emotionally charged memories, what researchers call flashbulb memories, where you were sure you remember exactly where you were and exactly what you felt, these are particularly prone to distortion over time. You remember the feeling perfectly. You reconstruct the facts around it. So here you are. You started this video absolutely certain about something that never happened. You still are. And right now, the very act of thinking about this, the emotion it is producing, the concepts you are encountering, they are all quietly reaching into the memories you have formed in the last 10 years and nudging them, just slightly, towards something new. Memory is not a record of who you were. It is a story your brain keeps rewriting about who you are. And it has been doing this, silently and without permission, every single day of your life. Tonight, when you remember something from your past, you are not pressing play on an archive. You are writing the next draft of a story that started the moment you were born. And somewhere in that story, sitting perfectly still between real events you genuinely lived, is a memory of something that never happened at all. You just can't find it.